Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the aerobics that you did there for us, Lauren. That running and all that. That was good. That was real exciting to see. There's only been a couple times where I've actually missed an offertory when I was supposed to play, and I got up there and my mind totally went blank. I just totally forgot about it, and I got up there and was sitting there waiting. It's like, so. We're supposed to have an offertory, right? And I looked down at the menu, and it was me. I was supposed to be playing, and so grabbed my trumpet real quick and get up and play something. And there's the piano player over there going. So, but anyway. All right, Judges chapter 3. Judges chapter 3. I would like to publicly thank Abigail Staten for her work this year. She's done a fantastic job playing the piano for everything, and also with the school, leading the choirs and music theory and other things that she was involved in. Appreciate her work and ministry, and she's done a fantastic job, and we'll miss her. I told her that she can't go, but you know, whatever. I guess it's a free country. We can't keep her here, and this isn't a dictatorship, so I guess she can go. But we will miss her and appreciate her work so much. All the time and effort that she puts into preparing and everything for these choir numbers. And I threw some really hard stuff at her this year, because I knew she could handle it. But anyway, so I'm glad she was here and appreciate her ministry to us. Judges chapter 3, we're going to continue in our study of Judges, but last verse of Judges 3 says, "And after him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, which slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad, and he delivered Israel." Now, this story takes place after the story of Ehud, which we looked at last time. Ehud delivered the children of Israel with a dagger by killing Eglon, the king there, who was a very fat man. And after that, he led the children of Israel in a battle, in a fight against the Moabites, and destroyed them. And they came back, and children of Israel decided to do evil again in the sight of the Lord, but they had rest for 80 years. And then comes Shamgar on the scene. So I believe this takes place somewhere in that 80-year period. Shamgar was not what you would call one of the primary judges in the Bible. He was just mentioned as somebody who delivered Israel. He judged Israel, but he was not one of the primary judges. So it probably took place during that time, or perhaps even during the time of Deborah and Barak. Actually, it probably took place during that time. I'm sorry, I said something wrong there, but it took place during the time of Deborah, Barak, not Ehud. But anyway, I just thought I would mention so you kind of have an idea of where the time frame is here of all of this. Let's pray first, and then we'll look at it. Lord, help us to understand some truths from your word tonight, that we'd understand this passage of Scripture, that you'd use it in our hearts. We do pray in Jesus' name, amen. Earlier in the passage, of course, we look at Ehud, but this little, small, seemingly insignificant story is kind of sandwiched in here. There's only one verse. And we're introduced to Shamgar, who was a secondary judge, which they believe. But nevertheless, he was used to deliver Israel, as we see. There are some important things to note from this passage of Scripture, things that we can apply, obviously, to us. The first thing I want us to see is that God used something small as a powerful weapon. Something small as a powerful weapon. What Shamgar used here, notice it says, after him was Shamgar the son of Anath, which slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad. Okay, now, Shamgar used what was called an ox goad. Now, what in the world was an ox goad? Some of you perhaps been on a farm, and you maybe know what an ox goad is. Maybe you had to use an ox goad. Probably not, but probably not something we use around here in the United States, but definitely in countries where they used oxen to plow a field. Okay, an ox goad looked something like this. Something similar to this. There's probably differing opinions about what it looked like. That's all right. This isn't going to be an exact replica, but it had a really pointy end, a little sharp end on it. And it could have been without the hook, I don't know, but probably had that pointy end at least. And then on the other end was some metal used for prodding or whatever to get the oxen to do what they're supposed to do. So that was really what the ox goad was used for. It was a long pole, probably 6 to 8 feet long, and sometimes oxen needed encouragement from time to time, kind of like people. How many of you ever need encouragement from time to time? Are you glad people don't use an ox goad on you? Yes, that's good. I'm glad as well. While this is a seemingly small instrument, it nevertheless was quite deadly. It really was. And Ehud also used a very small instrument that was very deadly as well, a very small dagger that he had made. So God uses, I believe, small things. Shamgar used the tools that were available to him to fight for the Lord. He used what tools were available. Now, we all, as individuals, as people, have certain tools that God has given us. And we need to take those opportunities, use those tools to fight for the Lord on His behalf. Now, one of those tools, I believe, today is the freedom that we have for religion in our country. It's being eroded every single day, but it still exists, even though it may not exist for much longer. However, it is a tool that we can use. I've been in countries where they don't have that tool available to them. I remember one time when I was over in the country of Jordan, and we had some men that were there at our conference, and they had come to visit and to learn in the institute that I was teaching in. And I explained to them what we do in going door to door and sharing the gospel with people here in the United States of America. And there was a group of men there from Syria, and I told them what we did because they had asked me how we did that. We just went door to door, knocking on people's doors and telling them about the Lord, handing them a John and Romans or whatever. And they looked at me and they laughed, and they said, "Man, if we ever did that in our country, we'd be killed." Well, it's true, because they don't like that sort of thing over there in Syria, going door to door. You have to build relationships and do things a different way. But this is a tool that we have that, to be quite frank, we don't use enough. We don't use it like we should. It's available to us. How about the tools of giving out the gospel openly, freely? You know, you can stand on the street corner and share the gospel with people. There are some people that do. I've gone down sidewalks before sharing the gospel with people without fear of my life. Now, maybe perhaps fear of people making fun, mocking, scoffing, perhaps something like that, but never fear for my life, wondering if I'm going to be killed or something. Now, there have been a couple of countries I've been to where we did share the gospel, and I wondered if I was going to make it out alive, but I did, as you can tell. I made it out alive. I'm still here today. But that's not necessarily the case here. It's a tool that we can use. People's doors are open for us to go and fight for the cause of Christ. But some of us have other tools and abilities that we can use. Some of us can talk. Some of you have the ability to communicate with people. You have a connection with individuals. You can sit down and carry on a conversation with anybody in the world, and it doesn't matter who it is, you have an immediate connection. Not everybody can do that. I can't do that with everybody. Now, I certainly try. I try my best to do that, but not everybody can. It's a gift, it's a talent, it's an ability that some people have, that God has given them. Use the tools that God has given you. You know, some people can't talk, but they can cook. I like those kind of people. I really do. There are all kinds of ways we can use cooking in our society today. Here's an idea. You know, we were in Juniata Baptist Church up there in Vassar, Michigan. Whenever we had somebody come to visit the church, we had a group of ladies who were called the Pie Committee. And every time somebody came to visit, they would make a pie that day. They had pies ready and waiting that the church provided. They had the pies ready to go, and they would stick the pies in the oven. And that afternoon, after somebody came and visited, they would walk to their door, knock on it, and hand them a nice piping hot pie that they could eat that afternoon, and thank them for coming and visiting the church. You know what? That made a big difference in a lot of people's lives, because food talks. Food talks an awful lot. It really does, especially right at the end of your dinner, when you're kind of wishing that you had gotten some ice cream or some kind of dessert, and somebody knocks on the door and hands you one. That's really good. It really is. It makes a good impression. But you know, that's using a tool and an ability that God has given you. You know, some people are great encouragers. They can, you know, make anybody feel good about anything. They're great at that. They're great in ministry. They're servants. Whatever the tools that God has given you, whether big or small, we should use them. Whatever tool God has equipped us with, we should use it for His ministry. So God used something small as a powerful weapon. But secondly, God used someone that was not trained to fight. Sorry, I left the T off there at the end of no. Okay, so someone that was not trained to fight. All Shamgar really had was an ox goad. Well, I'm really messing up. Goad, G-O-A-D. I guess that's what happens when you do it really fast. It's an ox goad. I'm sure that he knew how to use the ox goad on an ox. I'm sure he was pretty good at that. But on people, that's a different story. Now, if you have one end that you can whack people in the head with and the other end that you could finish them off, that's a pretty powerful weapon in your hand. But it'd be something that you'd have to know how to use. All Ehud had was that small little dagger that he used for the Lord to defeat Moab. And Shamgar used an ox goad and used it to defeat the Philistines. You know, God really delights in using people that are not trained. People that are not trained. Now, I'm all for Christian education. Don't get me wrong here. I really firmly believe in Christian education. I think it's something that we need to be involved in. In fact, I'm a big promoter of Christian college. I think it's important for young people who have gotten a great Christian education in a Christian school to take that education and go to a Christian college, and not take it and go to a worldly secular university where everything that you have been taught in the Christian school can be undermined. I'm all for that. I'm all for going to a Christian school, Christian college. Public colleges today are an absolute train wreck. And they are producing kids that don't have a clue about a lot of things. Obviously not about the Bible, but even as something simple as our country, the history of our country, where it came from. I watched a guy, he was a reporter, and he went to a college campus and he asked them what they were going to be celebrating on Monday. And they said, well, I don't know. Some people got it right, Memorial Day. And then he'd ask them, well, what's Memorial Day all about? And these people had no clue. They didn't have any idea. We'll just celebrate people that died or something. And then he asked the question, who did we fight against in the Revolutionary War? And the answers were amazing. They were astounding. France, China. I'm not kidding. It was amazing. To be quite honest with you, it was absolutely pathetic. Because they're not being taught that stuff in our public schools. They're not being taught that sort of thing in our public colleges. It's astounding to me. I'm all for Christian education. I believe it's absolutely necessary. I firmly believe that Christian schools are great as long as they're run properly. And we have one that's run properly here, I do believe. And I thank the Lord for the quality Christian education that our kids receive. And I've been in a lot of Christian schools, and some of them I wouldn't send my dog to. And I mean that. I'm serious about that. Because I wouldn't want my dog influenced in a bad way, because they're so rebellious. I'm saying that a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's really sad to see where a lot of them are going. Anyway, I'm getting off the subject here a little bit, but I'm all for Christian education. But there are many people who are serving in the ministry that were not trained that way in college. Did you know that? Did you know there are people serving in pulpits all across the United States of America that didn't train for the ministry? Did you know that? Did you know there are people who don't have a Bible degree that are preaching today? Did you know there are people who are preaching in pulpits in America that don't know Greek and Hebrew? You say, oh, boy, that's terrible. No, it's not. It's not necessarily. I'm one of them, actually. I have a degree in music education and not Greek. But the Lord equips those that He calls. The Bible says, faithful is He that calleth you. Does anybody know the rest of the verse? Who also will do it. Faithful is He that calleth you, who also will do it. You can have the most qualified person that you want. He can have degrees, doctorates in Greek and Hebrew, and can tell you, splice verses up and down in the Greek and Hebrew, and be a terrible preacher. And then you can have some poor backwoods person who gets up and just preaches like he knows what the Bible says, and God uses him in a powerful way. You ever heard of Robert Sheffey? Robert Sheffey was denied the opportunity to be an ordained minister with the Methodist Church. And he said, you know what, I'm going to go preach with or without your sanction, because I don't need your qualifications. I need God and His calling on my life, and that's all I need. Did God use Robert Sheffey? Absolutely. Now, I think training is good. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great to go to college and get some more education. To be perfectly honest with you, I wish I could get more. I wish I could get some more quality education. But again, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really want to go to school and study. I don't want to take tests. I don't want to write papers. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I will if I have to, okay, but I don't really want to. So all I'm saying is God equips those that He calls. He desires them to trust Him so that He can enable them. And that means that if they don't trust Him, that He won't enable them. It's that simple. But I can guarantee you from personal experience that God can help you do anything that He calls you to do. It doesn't matter who you are. God can help you do anything that He calls you to do. It's amazing to see how God takes people that are seemingly capable, humanly speaking, seemingly incapable, humanly speaking, and use them for God's glory and honor. Have any of you ever heard of evangelist Phil Schuler? Did he ever preach here? Maybe? Okay. Evangelist Phil Schuler, he was a famous evangelist, fundamental preacher. He just died a couple years ago. But he would travel around the country, and he would preach, wonderful messages. God used him. Many people were saved. Many people called into the ministry under his ministry. But it's interesting. Phil Schuler had an incredible stutter problem. I mean, it was so bad. It was so bad that nobody in their right mind would say, you know what, Phil Schuler's going to be a preacher. But when he was a teenager, he felt like God was calling him to be a preacher, despite his stutter problem. And he got up. You wouldn't know this. He had a stutter problem today because he doesn't talk with one. But when he would get up to preach, he would stutter until he got up to preach. And then as soon as he started preaching, the stutter was gone. It went away. In fact, when he was a teenager, he told his dad, who was the pastor of his church, he said, Dad, I feel like God wants me to preach. His dad said, okay, if you feel like you want to preach, then that's fine. We're going to give you an opportunity to preach. He said, but I'm going to warn you, I don't know if you can do it or not. He said, that's okay. God's called me to do it. I think He'll help me. Well, he got up to preach, and he preached for a really long time without stuttering. And finally, he preached so long, his dad had to say, okay, Phil, that's enough. We know God's called you. So he sat down. But people like that, it seems like they are incapable, humanly speaking, of doing something, but God calls them to do it, and He equips them to do it. Shamgar was the same way. We look at Shamgar, and he had an ox goad. I don't think Shamgar was a trained fighter. I really don't. Shamgar was probably a farmer. But God called him and he ran to the battle. He didn't shirk his responsibility that God gave him, and he took it to him, if you will. And he killed 600 men with an ox goad. I mean, think about that. Just amazing, astounding what God was able to do through Shamgar. So the point is that God uses logical people to carry out his plans. God uses average individuals, logically and illogically sometimes in our minds. God just uses people to carry out his plans. Let's go on to the third thing here. God's people here in this passage, I believe, were pretty much defenseless. They were pretty much defenseless. Now, here it appears as though the only weapon that Shamgar had was an ox goad. An ox goad. This is not the first time that they had been like this, and neither was it the last. I don't think the children of Israel had any weapons coming out of the land of Egypt, yet they fought anyway. You remember the story of Saul and Jonathan? They fought against the Philistines, and the Philistines were as the sands of the seashore. I mean, there were so many of them, a great multitude of them. And the only two weapons that they had in their hand were in Saul and Jonathan's, and that was it. 2 swords, Saul and Jonathan, and there were no other swords amongst the children of Israel. That was it. Because they had to go down to the Philistines to sharpen all of their tools, their pitchforks, their goads, and whatever else that they had. So they didn't have any weapons at all. The Philistines wouldn't let them use the blacksmith there when they were against them. So the children of Israel were practically defenseless, but God, in his power, in his gracious mercy, allowed Saul and Jonathan to really get a great battle, a great defeat of the Philistines that day. It was amazing to see how God worked. And when the judges went out to battle, it was usually without any weapons. You remember Samson? What weapons did Samson have? That's right, jawbone of a donkey. That's all he used. And he killed 1,000 people with it. Now, of course, he had the power and strength that God gave him. I know that. But it's interesting to note that when people were oppressed by an invading army, that they took their weapons away so they couldn't fight back. Many times, the children of Israel were found defenseless until they called on God, and then God came through for them. Now, the reason for their defenseless position were really multiple reasons. One of them I just mentioned, it was the oppression of the enemy. They would take their weapons away. But probably there was also a false sense of security after several years of no fighting. Remember, at this time, Ehud had delivered the children of Israel, and they had 80 years of rest and peace in the land. But probably there was also a lack of spirituality. The children of Israel failed to depend upon God again. They got their eyes off of the Lord and decided to live and worship idols, which is the next thing, get involved in idolatry. And as a result of that, they began to, they basically let down their guard, and they were defenseless. But also another reason is because they embraced the world and their enemies. They started to live with them and dwell with them, and then they started to take orders from them. And pretty soon the enemy was oppressing them and telling them what to do and taking away any of their weapons so they couldn't fight back. Boy, if that doesn't describe the way we are today, I don't know what does. When we as God's people today are not defenseless, even though we act many times like we are. It's amazing. The Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4, says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds." Does that not sound like we have defensive weapons? See, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're spiritual. We are not defenseless as Christians. We never have been and we never will be. We have God on our side. We have all power at our disposal as believers to overcome the evil one. God has given us power to help us. Goes on in the same passage in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, it says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. See, we don't have to be defenseless. We don't at all. But many times we are, because of the reasons that I gave a few minutes ago, that the children of Israel were defenseless. We are having a false sense of security. Everything's fine. We live in a country where there's not persecution, so you know what? Things must be just fine. When in reality, the devil is fighting. He's not giving up. So there's a false sense of security among believers. There's also a lack of spirituality among believers. And as a result, when things come into our lives, like temptations and trials, and the sin comes in, the temptation to sin comes in, then many times we fail and falter as a believer because we have a lack of spiritual depth in our lives. We don't have to be that way. We have the means by which we can combat the devil and actually get victory over him. Another reason why we would have problems with this and be defenseless is because of our idolatry. We place things up and make it more important than what God is in our lives. And many times we embrace the world and their enemy and the enemies around us. And we have this peace at any cost mentality. Hey, we just need to get along with people. We don't need to stand up for what's right and say anything against it. We just need to, not make any waves. Did Jesus Christ make any waves when he was here on earth? Did he not go into the temple and knock over the money changers' tables and cast them out? Did Jesus Christ make any waves? He didn't go and embrace the world. He wasn't like the world so he could win them. Not at all. Now, he sat down and he ate with them, yes. But he didn't become them. He didn't act like them so he could win them. Not at all. But that's what believers are doing. We're embracing the world, and we're joining hands with the enemy and their cause, thinking supposedly that we can defeat them or defeat the devil in some way and win them to Jesus Christ. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It never has. What we do is we take away our weapons, our warfare, and we make ourselves defenseless. The enemy then comes in and oppresses us. And that's the reason also for our lack of defense. Now, we don't have to be that way as believers. We really don't. We don't have to be defenseless. God's people do not have to act like they are. We can have the victory because we are on the victory side. And just as Shamgar went out there with a little tiny weapon, we too can use the weapons that God has given us. We can go out there with the ability that God has given us. And we can see God do amazing things. We can see God work. But it's a matter of us claiming what we have in Jesus Christ, our position that we have in Him, and going forth in victory, believing that we are more than conquerors, that the weapons that we have are not carnal, but they're spiritual through God to the destroying of strongholds. We can have victory. We can see God do amazing things today. But He's waiting for us to use the weapons that we have at our disposal, the tools that we have at our disposal. He's waiting for us to just yield to Him and say, you know what, I can't do this, but you can. He's also waiting for us to get out there and get on the battlefield so that He can use us. See, you can't fight if you're not there. You really can't. So we aren't defenseless. We really aren't. And we shouldn't act like we are. Because God has guaranteed us the victory. Well, there's the life of Shamgar. little small, obscure little verse in Judges chapter 3, but really teaches us a powerful lesson about what we can have in Jesus Christ. Lord, thank you for the truths that we find in your word tonight. Lord, help us.